Yay! What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 228.
We're getting up there.
That is the first time
I felt like I needed to jump in there.
We're up there. We haven't even started. I'm very excited about tonight's show. Today has been a bit of a mess, and we'll get into it in the show because I think that's kind of all part of the beauty of life. And our guest tonight is one of those individuals that we can talk to about all of this stuff. He's an incredibly receptive but also informative, educated and educational individual. David Roach is joining us on the show tonight. Yes. Coach Roach, but coaches both myself and Kim through this incredible web of ultra running and life stuff like that. So I'm excited to have him on the show. He was a last minute guest tonight. We love him because he's like, dude, anytime you want me on the show or whatever, I've got stuff to talk about all the time. And he's just a fantastic guest. We did have Candace Burt scheduled tonight. Unfortunately, there is apparently she lives in a small mountain town. We just saw her this weekend. We'll talk about it during the main show because she's also a client of our guest tonight. But she lives in a small mountain town that had an accident apparently on the main road where it connects that town to the outside world. So no internet. She literally has no internet, nothing, no signal, nothing like that. So she was unable to join us during the live show, but we will get her on, I promise. I know we had a lot of people in the chat room just saying like, I wanted this. I couldn't wait for Candace. We thought it
said Candace, but now it says David. What is going on?
I know, but even like talking with Candace this weekend, we were really excited to have her on. Race director for all of these 200s. She's the one that coined the 200 is the new 100. Badass runner.
FKT,
new
race
FKT
directing.
She ran and placed second at TNOA 100 this weekend, and we'll get her on the show, I promise. Moab, her 200 down in Utah is coming up very soon, so we'll get her on before that to talk about that race and other stuff like that. So I apologize in advance, but we have a guest tonight that is going. He's one of our favorites, and I'm so excited that he was available at literally the last minute. He's like, I'm making dinner for my stepmom. I'm in. So we've got him tonight. David Roach is going to be joining us on episode 228, and he's going. This is the best part. He's like, I've got a list of 5 things that every trail runner needs to know. And I went, I need to know this list. This is a perfect episode. So tonight, not only will he field your questions, but we're going to find out more about what are the 5 things that every trail runner needs to know. David Roach joins us on tonight's episode. Sit back, relax, get ready. Ginger Runner Live begins now. Ginger Runner. Yes! Yay! What is up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 228. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy Mondays to spend a little bit of it with us. Tonight's a big Monday, just in the world in general. Not only is it the Emmys.
It is the Emmys. The Seahawks are playing
right now. So we appreciate you taking that time away from these 2 very important events on this planet to spend a little of it with us and talking about trail running. And tonight, our guest is going to be dropping some serious knowledge. We've had him on the show a number of times. He's a fantastic guest. He's very knowledgeable in all things sport, running, ultra. He's a fantastic coach. Has helped me a lot this year get through some of my mental stuff that I've talked about on this show and run and race strong and hard. He's also helped Kim a lot this year. You've worked with both him and his wife, Megan, and they have a new book coming out, which we'll probably talk about at some point on tonight's show. But our guest, David Roach, is going to tell us all about the 5 things that every trail runner needs to know. And so I'm excited to talk a bit about that tonight. Before we even get into the introduction of our guest, I'm not the only person here hosting the show. Of course, I'm joined by Kim.
Hi, guys, and we are live, as we just mentioned. So if you guys have questions for our wonderful guest, David, please pop them into the chat room. We'll be pulling them throughout the hour.
Yep. And
there's some hawk hecklers in the chat room.
Hawk hecklers, huh? People, well, listen, let's be honest. The Hawks are going to have an interesting season this year. As a local, we have known this for a while. So heckle all you want.
I have faith in them. They're going to win tonight.
Yeah, tonight. The Bears going down. You're playing the Bears, right? Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
It should be an interesting game to not be following. All right, before we introduce our guest, of course, we have some individuals to thank every week. They help make this show happen. They are the reason that the channel is able to exist on a full-time basis, and those are our Patreon supporters, what we like to call the GR crew. They are our crew. They help us execute these shows, reviews, films, everything on a regular basis. They support us at all levels from $1 on up. So a big shout out to all of our GR crew members who have supported us on Patreon, which is patreon.com/thegingerrunner, of course. 3 individuals at that top tier really, really help us, and they are incredible humans. They're ultra runners themselves, starting with Chris Lee from Hong Kong, created this really cool organization called Trailblazer, showcasing the local trails there in Hong Kong. He's an amazing human, and got to meet him in person recently, and just a solid like hiker, runner, really, really solid dude. So if you find yourself in Hong Kong, you need to know, where do I run? His brick and mortar shop there in Hong Kong is great source of information. It's really beautiful. Yeah. Rick Bjarnason and his team at cheekymonkeymedia.ca. They're a web design company, but he himself is an ultra runner, and they do just great work. They're currently redoing the gingerrunner.com website. We've been doing some serious detail work last week. It looks fantastic. I'm excited to share it. But Rick is also a seasoned ultra runner, and a big shout out to him. He loves what we do here, and he loves the community. So he is supporting, which is just wonderful. And finally, of course, Mr. Brian Sands, lovely human being who has an incredible journey, lost over 100 pounds, a lot more now, actually. He's in the midst of this journey. Ran his first marathon last October, trained really hard over the year, ran his first 50K just a little over a month ago. He's already training for his second 50K/50 mile coming up. Super inspiring dude, and he just inspires us and the community. Wonderful human. So big shout out to those 3 individuals for supporting the show. Without further ado, our guest tonight is a seasoned ultra runner, fast runner. Oh man, the world record in the marathon. We'll talk about that with our guest.
Was it David?
It was David. He said it, but he didn't tell anybody. He let Kipchoge go do it. He's like, go ahead. But he's an ultra runner and a coach, a fantastic coach. He and his wife are this incredible team that are now based out of Colorado, and they have a book coming out.
Published
and all that good
author.
stuff. Published authors. He just placed 3rd. He and his wife both just placed 3rd at the Xterra Nationals in Snowbase in Utah this last weekend. So they've also recently raced. Let's just introduce him.
Do it.
Our guest tonight, David Roach.
Hey guys!
Yay!
The substitute teacher that comes in and everyone misbehaves while I'm here, or the backup quarterback. Seahawks, maybe.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, definitely backup. Not even backup. You're like the quarterback that you're ready to play at all times. You're kind of the all-star, like wild card. We're like, we got to bring out the wild card. I'm actually
much more like the water boy that's just there, like, Coach, I'm here if you need me. Saturday night at 9 p.m. Like, I'm here.
Man, it's awesome to have you back on the show. You've been busy. So a lot has happened since you've last been on the show. A lot has just happened in life, not just running. You're obviously a successful runner full time and all that, but a lot of like life stuff has happened. So you've picked up and moved. You're in a whole new state, whole new house, a whole new everything, right?
Yeah, we're in Colorado now. No longer, if people are longtime watchers, listeners, that no longer in the cave dungeon that I was in my first appearance. So yeah, really upgraded in the world. Our studio apartment was like 250 square feet, and now we have a house. So yeah, it's really funny because our dog Addie, I'm like, where is she? And she's like in the other room because we're so used to her being right there. So a little bit less dog smell, a little bit more space. So really fun thing. And then it's just been like an amazing year of coaching stuff, whether it's you guys or Candace, who was going to be on the show, Jason Schlarb this past weekend at Run Rabbit Run. Like, yeah, every weekend's incredibly fun.
And you've been writing a book. So you and Megan have been writing this book. It's beautiful. I'm so excited for you to finally release it. I know that you're doing pre-sales right now and all that good stuff, but how have you been able to balance all of that? Because writing a book isn't just let's sit down real quick over a couple nights and write this thing up. So this has been a long process. How have you been able to juggle that, the move, your clients, all that stuff?
Well, we got really strong beers, and then we sat. So yeah, with the dogs might bark for just a second while my mom-in-law comes home. With the book, basically these are things that we talk about with our athletes every day. The top themes of the book, it's all about being called The Happy Runner. It's available for pre-order now if anyone wants to check that out. But these are things we talk about with people every day. So we just tried to take an hour or two every day to write, starting last November and then till today. And it's a lot like running, right? And I think that's one thing we'll get into today is that these little itty bitty actions, like if you just put them on top of each other, add up to this massive whole. It's not like writing a book it's just a lot of sentences, a lot of words, and writing a sentence takes what? Any of us could do that now in 10 seconds. And the same thing goes with running, it's not like to run, long term, it's not like you run thousands of miles, you run a few steps a bunch of times. So yeah, there's a lot of that. And then there was a lot of like giving yourself grace to fail. I mean, I think one thing with the book that I don't see so much when I write articles and things is that, it really sucks sometimes, and that's okay. So like if you put something on paper that sucks, like you can then work with that, as opposed to like the tyranny of the blank page. Nothing's worse than a blank page. And that goes with running or anything you do too. Like a 0 is the worst thing you can do if you're like able to do anything, because like zeros add up.
I remember college and high school, that's how I would write my papers. It would be a blank page for the longest time, and then I'd be like, I can't. This is it. I got to just put something down, and then I would just crush through something. Let's say you needed 3 pages of words, and I would make 3 pages of words, and then I realized, well, okay, this is garbage, but at least you had something to work with. And then when you started to work with it, you realize that it is better to have something, and you can work with that, and you can actually turn it into something pretty damn great, as opposed to just like blank pages. The blank pages were like staring me in the face all the time. Did you give yourself a deadline, or are you working with a publisher, or how did that work?
We had a publisher with pretty tight deadlines. So, it was good in some ways, because it was like having a coach that told you to do unrealistic or things that you thought were unrealistic. And then it also helps to have like the co-author. Writing it with my wife, Megan, it kind of means that you always have someone there to pick you up when you can't do something or can't look through it anymore, and an editor to come through to like make whatever I do suck less. So yeah, we actually wrote it almost all from December to April of last year. Some breaks. So it was like really condensed. And then since it's just been like, the publisher's been like, it's coming out in November. They want to hold it for the holidays and stuff. So, it's definitely a book. It's I feel like that we set out to do. We're like, do we have a book worth of thoughts? And even now, not 100% sure that it's a book's worth, but it looks like a book, which is a pretty cool thing. So for the people listening, it's not a normal running book. Like it gets a little bit into running stuff, but it's much more about like life and death, essentially.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like, there's a line in there. So a lot of what the book says can be characterized as like a Snapple cap gains sentience and then writes a book about running. And so, that's kind of what our wisdom can be boiled down to.
I was going to say, like, great marketing already. You're like just on it. It's a book.
It's a book.
But I will say this. So I have read a couple chapters from this book. One chapter in particular, David sent to me a couple of times, because I've dealt with just mental health stuff over my lifetime, but over the last few years, more so specifically in running related stuff. I've talked about it on shows. Go back and listen. But David has sent me this chapter over and over again, and every time I read it, it's like it pulls me out of my head. It helps me realize that I'm not alone. There's a lot of runners that deal with certain mental blocks, whether it's anxiety or depression or any of these sorts of things that can influence a runner, but even on the more surface level of just being down on your abilities or that sort of thing. And the chapter has been incredibly helpful. It gives you perspective, it gives you insight, and it helps normalize these things that feel so foreign to so many people. So, David, I'm very excited for this book to be released. I think it's a very unique and important angle on our sport that very few, if any, have really delved or touched on. So I'm excited. I'm really, really excited for it.
So much. And I mean, for the people that are listening that might not ever read it or anything like that, I mean, the one thing I would say is coaching is great in that it gives you do get a window into people's lives over long periods of times. I mean, I'm looking at, there's a lot of athletes I've been coaching for 2,000 days. And that means that like I'm talking to them 2,000 different, like each day talking to them a little bit, which is way more than I've talked to anyone in my family. And so you do get to know people pretty well. And I think like what that window does reveal is that like life is complicated for everyone. And for some people a lot more than others. And, you know, when you're in your own head, it often feels like you're the only one dealing with things. And your issues don't have to be like clinical depression to amount to something that is just as like big to you, to your own experience. So basically all this stuff falls on a spectrum, and everyone's dealing with certain amounts, and like trying to reach a point where you can fully accept yourself, or at least move toward that general realization that like the goal is to accept yourself over time.
Yeah. I love it. I look forward to it. We'll obviously get you on the show once that drops, but lots to talk about today. I'm realizing like we could. That's why I love David, is because we can go down all these different paths that make for wonderful full-length episodes.
Yes.
We will have to do in the future. But I want to talk about this list that David has sent us. 5 things every trail runner needs to know. And when David says something like this, you know that, okay, these are the 5 things I need to know, whether you're a beginner or a seasoned pro. I don't think it matters. Before we get into that list, of course, Kim has tons of live viewers watching right now. And if you are watching and you have a question for David, this is a great opportunity to ask. He's a very knowledgeable coach and has coached some of the best in the world, including this last weekend. Candace Burt crushed it at Tianaway. Jason Schlarb.
Yep.
Absolutely did amazing. And like, I feel like every week David has this list of here are our athletes, and they just crushed it. And it's, like 50 people every weekend that just do something amazing.
And speaking about all those amazing athletes, we do have an amazing athlete in our chat room. Casey is in the house.
Casey Lichtai.
Casey says she's a big David fan. And Casey had a question for you, David. Casey says, "Hi, everyone. I have a question. David, how can you sleep when you have your athletes running ultras throughout the night? It's so darn exciting."
I don't. So Run Rabbit Run was on Friday to Saturday. So it started at noon for Jason. And then I also had Sarah Pizzo, who was 4th, and Andrew Skirka, who ended up being 7th. And yeah, so like we were like waking up throughout the night. I probably slept an hour or 2 that night, and we had a race like right after that. So yeah, it's not necessarily the best for sleep schedules, but it's definitely the best for like, imagine being like a fan of a sports team like the Seahawks, but times in a million. And that's what it's like every single weekend, because you just know what's gone into it for each person. So like Jason called me up 3 minutes after he crossed the finish line. And he told me that he wanted to call me from the course when he realized from mile 88, because he had his phone on him, and he knew that, but the only problem is he knew that if he called me, I would like never forgive him for calling me. So yeah, no, Casey asked that's a great question. And I think it's why Megan and I don't identify as athletes. I mean, our own running is because we love the process of training and running. But like, we don't really care about our own racing beyond that, because like we're 99% coach, 1% athlete.
Sure. I love it. Yeah, shout out to Casey. And again, the results this weekend are pretty amazing. I know that even like during UTMB, when us just as fans are up all night kind of watching and following tracking the women and men's races, as a coach who has a number of athletes there, I think that's even more interesting, is that you're not just rooting for the front of the pack. Even though you might coach some of them, you're rooting for every one of your clients and those who are all ranges. So you're not just up for the elite race, you're up for the days that it takes some of those people to finish those events.
Like 45 hours or whatever, like the people that are like, when you're chasing cutoffs and things, that is the truth. Like, I know with the pros that, they're going to put out what they got on the day, and it's not going to change their lives one way or the other, probably. Right. But the people that are like, maybe chasing a cutoff or whatever, it's just, that is the true nerve-wracking thing, and where it's like, you're just wishing for the best. And yeah, with Casey on, congratulations to Casey for top freaking 10 UTMB. Doing that from where you live is one of the most amazing accomplishments of all time.
She does not fail to impress us every time she races, because she races and trains in Nebraska, fairly flat, fairly non-mountainous, and then she goes and crushes these like epic mountain races that challenge even the athletes that live in the mountains and train on them all the time. Casey, big shout out to you. Awesome to have you in the chat room tonight, and congrats again on UTMB. So David's list. He has 5 things that every trail runner should know. David, I'm going to read the list first, and then we'll kind of go one by one, because I think that's the most important thing is breaking it down, but also identifying what they are in advance. It's not like it's a surprise. Number 1 is surprise. The Trial of Miles, Running economy is everything. Workouts matter, but less than you might think. Specificity is overrated. Healthy running is active and earned. Let's start with the first of the 5 things every trail runner should know: the trial of miles.
Awesome. So this is the most basic element of running training. And I think sometimes people skip it or think that they should be thinking beyond it. So what the trial of miles is if you've never read Once a Runner, I don't necessarily recommend it, especially like it has some gender issues or things like that, issues for its time. But what it basically describes is a guy that gets kicked out of college, goes to the woods in Florida, and undergoes this thing called the trial of miles, where he basically runs a crap ton. And from that emerges like a new runner. And what the principle is for all of us is that the basic goal of running training is to be able to do as much easy aerobic running as you can sustainably without breaking down. And so forget about all the complicated stuff that I say, that others say. Forget about flies in the room that Ethan just bagged bare hand.
Killed it.
Now that's impressive. So forget about all that stuff and try to boil it down. Okay, just spending as much time running easy as I can is the first step. And so the priorities are: 1, you need to make sure that your easy is truly easy. I think a lot of people go, it's just the temptation is to go too hard. And
right.
So really dialing in your easy. And 2, just prioritizing consistency and frequency over epicness and all that sort of thing. So like a 10-minute run is plenty. I mean, I might have told you guys, like, I'll take a 5-minute run around the hallways in your, just run around barefoot in your house. Like if you can't leave it, that's plenty. Like the trial of miles is not about the total amount. It's more just about making running a part of who you are. And to do that, you have to do it as much as you can, like constantly. So consistency is super key. And that goes for anything you do in life.
So this is perfect. Like this is something that I ran into very recently, as have you.
Mm-hmm.
Like we lead busy lives. It's every day is a bit of a change up. There's always something going on. We have a dog who's had surgery and requires a lot of extra care. We're out of the house a lot. We travel a lot. So there's very recently been days where I've reached out, to David and just been like, man, I have to pull a 0 day today, or I feel bad. I didn't get my workout in. You have me scheduled to do 10 miles and I didn't get any, or, that sort of thing. And I feel bad, like I have this, it's the client's guilt of, do I tell this person who spent the time to create this thing for me, do I tell them that I'm not able to do it? But your responses have been exactly that. It's, I don't care what you do. Like if you have a day where you can't run 10 miles, I don't care. I'd rather you go run 10 minutes. Like if you can get 10 minutes out of that day, it's not even about the miles, it's about the consistency. And you've told me that a bunch of times, and it finally started to click in. I was like, that's interesting that he would say he just wants 10 minutes. But when you told me it was about consistency, that changed my whole perspective on failure versus success in that sort of training aspects. I'm not failing when I don't run a specified amount of miles. It's about just being consistent.
You don't run today. It's about, every day is an independent variable. You can pick back up tomorrow with 10 minutes or 10 miles. And like, so to undergo the trial of miles, you have to fully accept, this is where a lot of the psychological things come in. You have to fully accept the randomness of a running life and the stuff that we all face in everything, but especially with running, where like your body is going to break down. For women, you're going to, like, the way your menstrual cycle interacts with your running could be massively disruptive to your plans for some people. It varies a lot by the person. Your dog could get sick with cancer. There's all these different things that come up. And so committing to this broader trial of miles is not about committing to being the best runner you can necessarily. It's more just about committing to this lifestyle that you care about and that adds meaning to your life. And it's not just psychological. There's a lot of physiological reasons to do that, that it matters, from how aerobic development actually happens to how you start to build running economy. But I think the most important key.
Oh no!
Oh no!
And
you just froze. You said the key, and then you froze. So sorry, that last little sentence. Just say the last sentence.
Maybe that's the ultimate metaphor for life.
I know.
You
I
really
knew
did.
it. I really did. It just froze, and we lost you. Sorry.
Yeah, we say that the only people that think they have the answers are idiots. No one has answers. So the key is just to keep moving, to not judge yourself day to day, to not be like, oh, I'm not a runner because I haven't run in a week or 6 weeks or a month.
Yeah.
You're picking up that running life every single morning when you wake up again, and that's the same running life whether you're doing 30 miles that day or 5 minutes or rest.
Yeah, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna interrupt because we have a very important all caps comment in the chat room from one Megan Roach saying, "Where did Addie Dog go?"
Sorry, Addie.
All right, okay.
There
I think
she
all
is.
is right in the world.
All is right.
She smells dinner downstairs, so
Oh,
food?
She's like standing by the door.
And now, yeah, Megan's saying that Addie Dog is chewing the Wi-Fi cables. That's why we lost you.
Addie actually have the answers. Oh, there she is.
But yeah, so even just talking about making sure that the easy miles are easy. That I'm glad you even brought that up, because going back to that marathon world record that occurred this last weekend, which is mind-blowing. Like it's a mind-blowing accomplishment. Kipchoge just crushed it. But I read in an interview that yes, he runs at this 414, 440. What is the pace that he's doing per mile for the marathon? It's insane.
6 or something.
Yeah. But his easy days, he's doing 9.5 minute miles or something. He's taking his easy days. For him, if you think about that, that's twice as slow, which is crazy. It's crazy to think that someone of his caliber is taking his easy days that easy. And I guess that's important.
Well, I think the big lesson for normal people is that easy isn't a pace. Easy is an effort. So it can vary a ton day to day, and that you need to be willing to slow down until there's no resistance. So like a good example, I have this all the time where I set out and I feel resistance at nowhere near that level, obviously, but I'll feel resistance at a pace that's like much slower than I would ever, like 4 minutes slower than, and then just slow down more and more and more. So like for a normal runner, let's say that's doing a 4-hour marathon, not like a male runner doing 4-hour marathon. Like sometimes that might mean that your easy pace or the pace that correlates to an easy effort is like 13 or 14 minute miles that day. Just that particular day when you feel like crap. Other days you might be running close to your marathon pace by the end of the run, and that's fine too. But to be really receptive to in dropping your ego with easy running, that it's just essential. And running will do that for you whether you want to or not. Like if you have any ego as a long-term runner, like I don't know what data points you're getting, but like it's not the ones I'm getting. If anyone's ever had GI issues on a run, I don't see how you can have ego after that. But yeah, so being willing to adapt easy days to make it so that if it's not fun, like if it doesn't feel relaxed, then it's not easy. You're going moderate that day. And that kind of defeats the purpose of that particular goal.
Brilliantly put.
So you just kind of answered it here. I think Elena in the chat room asked, how can you tell if a run is easy if you are getting stronger during training?
Oh, so I think that's a really fascinating question because it raises the issue of mission creep, which people probably have heard in other contexts. But the problem with running is that as you get fitter, you can put out more and more every day, to the point that you start to run every run pretty fast because you're much fitter. But the problem is that almost always ends in breakdown and stagnation eventually. So someone like Kipchoge, he could go out and run 5:20 pace every day for every minute of every run, pretty much without an issue, as crazy as that sounds. But he would get way worse. And over time, that 5:20 pace would become difficult for him, at least on some of the runs. And so every runner is facing a microcosm of that. So basically the issue is to really enforce, to have some days that are just purely easy. And on those days, you take pride in being slow. I mean, my wife and I wrote an article for Strava last week where we talked about this exact subject. And the issue is, if your easy run impresses any of your Strava followers, you are doing it wrong. So to take pride in that, like your easy is truly easy, and that when you're done, you're easy. You're like, you could go do it again.
I love it. I'm so glad that is point number 1 of 5 things every trail runner should know. We'll call it 5. Are we counting down, David, or are we counting up? What's your preference?
Let's count up.
I love it.
I thought you just called him Babe, and I was like, again?
Again with the Babe? That was point number 1 of 5. Let's get to number 2. So running economy is everything.
Yeah. First I need like a Coach Babe hat. GRL.
I know what we're getting, David.
Now he does too.
No, something different.
Okay.
Something unrelated.
Okay. All
right. So this is kind of the essential, this interrelates to point 1. And this is on running economy. So it's while it sounds like it's a slightly complicated term that will make you fall asleep in a lecture hall or something, running economy, what it basically means is how much energy it takes to go a given pace. And running economy incorporates pretty much every variable that you could care about, aerobic, neuromuscular, biomechanical. So it really is a catch-all. But I think it's really important for athletes to think about the goal is to improve your running economy, not to get better at going harder. So you want faster paces to be easier, not to make it easier, not to make harder something you can do more often. Because I think a lot of the times, like, you think running's going to change how it feels over time, but it doesn't. Like, all that changes is the different, like, how fast you're going, how much power you're putting out. You only have so much hard you can give. So the goal is to learn that hard and fast don't have to be synonyms. And that sounds like a "that's what she said" joke, but it's not. So yeah.
That's what she said. Nailed it.
As I was saying it, I was like, man, Megan in the chat room is totally going to get me for that. So yeah, in the way that you do running economy, I mean, there's a lot of different ways, but the easiest way is you need to actually understand how to run fast. And a lot of people skip that step. I mean, the analogy we often use is if you go to if you ever see kids running at recess or something, it looks so effortless and natural. And then you look at like a 40-year-old running who does this all the time, and it looks so forced and unnatural. And like, what is the difference between those two? That is, you're getting at that running economy element. And so the goal is to kind of introduce some recess running into your training. That's it. And what we have our athletes do, there's a lot of different ways, are strides, where essentially you're often just doing 20 seconds fast, like 4 to 6 times with some rest in between. And you're doing that a few times a week. But basically it's kind of crazy and magical in some ways, in that athletes that introduce this stimulus often find even their easy paces getting way faster over time. And I think what it gets back to is that if you never like go that fast, like you're close to your maximal speed in training, your body just totally forgets how. And over the course of years, your old fast starts to become like it slows down and slows down and slows down. And then everything kind of becomes hard, and you become the 40-year-old plotter as opposed to the kid. And so whether you're 70 or 20, you really want to try to run like that kid as much as you can. And so those first two elements, easy running and then this kind of recess running economy thing, that's training to us. Like those two elements are the background drumbeat that just keeps playing as almost all year round, other than breaks that you need to take psychologically or physically. Those two elements, easy running and strides, just do it a long time. And what you'll start to see is that this snowball starts to roll downhill, because as your strides get a little faster, your easy running gets a little easier. And as your easy running gets a little easier, you get a little bit more aerobically efficient, which helps you on the strides. And then it goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And over the course of years, like, you can go from thinking your potential is one place and then finding out it's actually way higher than you thought. So yeah, those are the two main points.
Two first of 5. But again, I work with David, so I've seen this data point where at the end of a run, like you'll say 6 miles, and at the end of it do 4 by 20 seconds or something. And at the beginning, I was kind of like, 4 by 20 seconds?
Helping?
Like, I'm done with this in a matter of minutes. It's super easy to go do 20 seconds hard or whatever. But then now that I'm doing it more and more, like, I really look forward to it, because it's something that kind of breaks stuff up. And sometimes you can throw them into the middle of a workout or a run. I don't want to say workout, but I like it. I kind of like every time that you just throw like 4 by 20 at the end of it or something, because I'm like, all right, I got to do I got to do something at the very end. I'm really excited about it. And yeah, and that I like that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a staple of like elite running training forever, but I think it's especially important for athletes that might not be top level pros because those athletes have not developed that skill as much over time. And in trail running, it's extremely important for the pros, we found. And I think it's one thing that explains a lot of like, some of what our athletes have been able to do even in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. But yeah, I mean, there's some really fascinating studies out there that kind of get at this from more recently because it's really tough to know why this is helpful. We can guess and we have theories, but what's a lot easier is to measure it being helpful. And so there's a few studies in particular that measure, they just had athletes do like 6 to 10 by 30 seconds fast, let's say, for 6 weeks. And what they found is that these athletes were ending up running 5 to like 6% faster in their 10Ks, all without having any change in their VO2 max or these other variables that we think about. So they didn't get like fitter aerobically. Like nothing changed under the variables, slow moving shifts. What changed is the amount of energy it took to actually go that pace. Their running economy improved just from doing these short little things. And there's a lot of theories for why that might be, including like crazy ones, like how the heart actually pumps, and how smooth muscle contracts around, neuromuscular things like your brain rewires. Really fascinating stuff. But all for most people, the big takeaway is do a lot of running easy. Make sure that you still know how to run really fast. Combine those two, and who knows where your progression chart might end.
Awesome. Whoa. I just swallowed my own throat.
Was it the fly?
It was the fly. It's revenge.
That needs to be a quote at the front of our book. I just swallowed my own throat. This book.
This book is so good. I just swallowed my own throat. Ethan Newberry. Rest in peace.
It's a book, David.
It's a book. It's a book. Point number 3. Workouts matter, but less than you might think. So I'm fascinated by this one. So you've had me on this like a workout a week. Like by workout, let's define workout, because I know early on in my running I was like, a workout is just every run, right? Like
I'm working out every run.
So let's go there first. So the point is workouts matter less than you might but less than you might think. But let's define workout first.
Great, yeah. So terminology-wise, a run is just your daily, where there's no goal, the easy days, the kind of easy, maybe you go a little faster at the end, the days with strides that I just mentioned. Workouts are more structured intervals or even like fast finish runs, things like that, where you're stressing your body and adding a stimulus that can be really productive, or that same stress can, cause self-destruction. So workouts are where I think a lot of runners define, like when runners are like, okay, I want to improve, like, well, my workouts need to be better. And so they're like, oh, I've seen people do 6 by mile or whatever, 10 by 5 minutes, whatever crazy workout you see online. And they're like, okay, that's how I get better. And they start doing those, but without checking those boxes before, of making sure that they know how to run fast and making sure that they have their aerobic base maximized. And then they find that they just stagnate over time. And I think a lot of athletes see this, even really good ones, that like if you do workouts, you reach your potential, you reach like the level you're going to be at pretty quickly. So I think what's helpful is to think of it as building a wall. God, this is so lame when I'm such like it's such like a high school substitute teacher. I'm right in my wheelhouse right now. But
it's
okay,
a book.
So it's a book. So let's think of a wall. Okay, imagine that you have 100 bricks in your wall. What can you do with that wall? One, you can just start building it up so that you have a 100 brick wall. That's really awesome, and a 100 brick wall probably does some stuff. But what the other option is to keep adding bricks. And so you can combine like doing a little bit of building with adding a lot more bricks, and over time you realize that your overall potential is much greater than it ever was with that initial total. So where workouts come in is workouts just rely on those other things that you have already developed. Your aerobic base through easy running, your running economy, your high-end top-end running economy through strides and that sort of thing. So if you jump into workouts without having that stuff close to maximized, you're really limiting what you can. You're going to think you're way worse than you are. So instead, what to do is to make sure that box is checked, then do some workouts that use it, but then to go back and then make sure to keep going back to the easy running and strides as the key to training, and only using workouts to like get better over time at being able to hold paces a little bit longer. So in practice, what that means for most people is it's great to do workouts. Don't have them be crazy hard. So like anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes of total intensity, like split up as intervals however you want, whether it's 10 by 1 minute with 1 or 2 minutes off, or like 8 by 3 minutes. It all depends on the person. But instead of doing these massive workouts that just break you down so that you lose what you built up, all that aerobic fitness and running economy, and to do that for long enough, you'll get incredibly fast. And then maybe you can prioritize workouts a ton once you're really developed. But even then, I mean, thinking about Jason Schlarb, who won Run Rabbit Run this weekend, I mean, God, I don't want to speak for him, but I think his biggest workout of the entire cycle was 8 by 3 minutes or something like that. For like a structured workout. He did a few longer tempo runs and hard races, but it was all focused on building up that running economy and not hammering him with workouts.
See, that's amazing. And as someone who's also been experiencing this through my workouts and stuff like that, is seeing that I have a workout a week. I don't have a workout 3-4 times a week. That was one thing that I did wrong early. Like when I was just starting getting into marathons, and I was like, oh my God, I want to be a fast marathoner.
Gotta do workout.
I was like, I'll do my long run slow. I'll do maybe a early run of the week slow, which is recovering from the weekend. But then Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, I want to run hard. And I would do that. And you learn over time that there's not longevity in there, and it doesn't seem to yield the results that most people expect. So you're not doing that, right? You're not doing multiple workouts a week, right?
Oh, no, yeah. And that's for no athletes on the team. Even ones that want it, which is pretty much all of them. And yeah, I mean, I think every runner faces what you faced, Ethan. And I mean, what happens is if you don't get injured, which is a big if, people that do that, go hard a lot, will have immediate progression and then level off very quickly, like within a year or two usually, but maybe even longer, but they'll think, okay, that worked. I improved doing that, so I should keep doing that. When in reality, that worked in spite of what you were doing rather than because of it. And instead, if you like kind of point the time horizon longer, out 10 years, let's say, you find that, oh yeah, easy running and like learning to run fast is where it's at. And this other stuff gets much easier if I improve it, the baseline elements of running training. And so basically what that means for most athletes is like, running training doesn't need to hurt. It doesn't need to suck. Like it can be really fun and sustainable. And what you might find is that your old hard is your new like moderate day. And that's when running really becomes fun, is when things start to get much easier to go faster.
Love it. Yeah, that's definitely something that I found is one workout a week. I look forward to it, as opposed to the like 3 workouts that I was doing for, years in my early days, where you'd begin to dread that like Friday's hill repeats or something, and like it's just not fun. But now I get a workout a week and I look forward to it. Like I look forward to whatever pain I'm going to feel that day. I'm going to feel it, and I'll probably feel it the next day, but it's that good, like I did something,
Unless you read your training log wrong and think you have like 4 hours of workout,
which I did once, and that was dumb. I read it as like, oh, I've got 10 by 10 minutes, like. What is this? And it was inaccurate. And I remember messaging you, I think 3 minutes before the workout, and you're like, whoa, no, that is not, read it again. And I did. And I was like, oh, I'm glad I didn't start.
Talk about that. It's like, wow, the power of a typo in this setting is so immense. It's like, we have some people on the team that if that 16-mile run becomes it might become a 61-mile run. If we're not our keystrokes.
Wow, so, I trust David. 61 miles.
All right.
It's a Tuesday.
He says trust the process. I guess this means
I gotta quit my job. I gotta go for 61. I trust him.
There's a sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a question from Joe in the chat room, and Joe asked, if long run is end of week, when should the workout occur?
So I think it doesn't really matter, but as separated as far as you can from it. So I think Wednesday, Saturday, that sort of break is ideal. Though, it can be basically as long as you have a recovery day in between, that's enough. I think most athletes should never stack efforts, like have one hard effort one day and one hard effort the next. With running training, like that might have a purpose in a physiological vacuum, but with running training, there's so much potential for breaking down that you don't want to like do hard efforts under too much stress, because even if it's a 2% chance of injury, enough 2% chances will get you injured.
Vivian in the chat room is also bringing up a good point here. Can you get intensities from workouts riding a bike? Would that translate to running? I know that we had wildfires here in Seattle and Washington for weeks. The air quality was, you could not go outside. It was that bad. It was worse than Beijing. Would a bike work, like an indoor trainer or something like that? Can you get your workouts done on a bike? I know you mentioned it to me.
Yeah, well, we're huge fans of cross training, but so there's one caveat there, which is we're talking about running economy. Biking won't help your running economy that much, because to get better, you need to run, and you need to run like it's the only way to get those specific neuromuscular adaptations. But the other end there is that a big component of running economy is aerobic development, and bike, elliptical, cross swimming, those are incredible aerobic activities. Better than running, I would say, because you can do a lot more. You can input a lot more stress before you break down. Yep. So, I mean, we're huge fans of it, and like, you wouldn't want to if you don't have to, you wouldn't want to change workouts, but you can add intensity with cross training and get an extra bang for your buck while circumventing this thing we're saying about workout. Like, you want to limit the number of workouts you do.
Got it. Point number 4.
You're very fancy tonight.
Well, because I don't have graphics. Because we literally came up with this. David's had this for a long time, but we got David on minutes before the show because of our previous guest. So I didn't have graphics. So this is my graphic.
They're pretty good graphics.
Point number 4. Tips all trail runners need to know. Number 4 is specificity is overrated. So I'm actually really curious about this.
Yeah.
All the time, specificity is really, really important.
Yeah, so basically this gets back to the general theory that running is running. And I think a lot of the times, especially trail and ultra runners, can start to think, oh no, it's not running. It's this very unique sport that involves hiking and eating like candy and like all this other stuff. But at its core, like just becoming a better runner will raise your performance ceiling at all these different events. And if you overemphasize specificity, what does that mean in practice? Well, if you're doing a 100-miler, that means that you start to do a lot of like those long slogging, long run type things, thinking that that's what's going to help you most in your race. And it might to a point, but you're going to maximize all the adaptations you can get from doing that very rapidly, probably just in a few weeks for most athletes. And so once you've maximized that, you're just kind of left with crappy running economy and getting really good at slogging. And so that's when you start to be like, oh, well, I'm not improving. Like, why am I not improving? Instead of that, if you be like, okay, specificity matters for things I really care about, but what I'd much rather want to do is to be like a good runner, mountain athlete, all these different things, this versatile person. And I think the best analogy for this is thinking back to how education works in any field. So let's think about law, since that's where I come from. In law, they don't teach you environmental law like until really much at all, and nothing about like practicing environmental law. It's all about like more esoteric environmental law. What they teach you about is like some case from the 1920s or the 1600s about, I don't know, some dispute that happened on like a farm in England or something. But the principle is that once you know the law and think like a lawyer, you can then apply that to other things with very little specific training. So there's no such good thing as a good environmental lawyer. There's just good lawyers that apply their training to environmental law. And the same thing goes to running. There's good runners that then apply their training to like sky racing or 100-mile or 5Ks or whatever. So yeah, you don't want to be that person that just skips ahead and that doesn't develop these broad sets of skills, because then you're going to kind of limit your long-term potential. So there's a lot of physiology behind why that is, but basically what it means in practice for most people is like, don't worry about specificity, like simulating what the types of things you're going to face in the race too much until you get pretty close to the race, like a month or two before. Before that, just like do what you love, do what we've said before, and then you'll start to do the specific work, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking awesome. Whereas before you were like, oh, well, I'm just trying to survive.
I think that's definitely a key sort of distinguishing remark there at the end is save it for the last month or something of training leading up to an event. Yeah, because I can imagine someone who's training for a really mountainous European, no switchback sort of climbing race, but they have to train in Nebraska, for example. That could probably explain a lot of Casey's just success, is that specificity comes probably later in her training when she's getting out there, prepping for the race on the course itself or that sort of thing. Really interesting to think that way. I would think that getting out on technical trails every single day is just going to make me a better technical runner. But what you're saying is that potentially yes, but to a point, maybe not as much or more than just doing it before, like a technical race or something.
Sure, and technical is the best example, or ultra in general, is that getting good at going slower is never a skill you want to cultivate too much over time. And so on technical terrain, you have to go slow dictated by the terrain, which means your power output is going to be less. And eventually over time, your body will adapt to this new level. So even while you might be efficient on technical terrain, you'll find that you start to slow down. And this gets back to like a much more detailed point that I won't be able to fully explain here, but we call it the climbing paradox, in that athletes that focus so much on vert and climbing end up becoming worse climbers over time. It takes a while, but eventually they get so good at these specific movement patterns that they lose the speed, the running economy necessary to be the best climber they can. And then they find that their climbing starts to go back. And you see that often with road runners that come into trail running, is that they come into the sport and kind of dominate right at the outset and then become much more then they come back down to earth a little bit after that. And that's kind of what you're seeing, the climbing paradox at first. I think everyone probably knows that, right? You spend a lot of time in the mountains and you end up getting kind of slower over time. So yeah, all those are really complicated points. The basic theory is, focus on your long-term running development. This is all about time horizon, right? If you're thinking 5 or 10 years down the line, specificity matters a lot less, because like specific training for some race 3 weeks out or 8 weeks out or 10 weeks out, like that really is just a blip on the radar in the 5 or 10 year time horizon. So to keep thinking in that, it's like when you're making your decisions about your running life, ask that, okay, how does this influence my long-term trajectory?
Awesome. You were going to say something?
Yeah, I just have a question in the chat room from Jeremy. And Jeremy asked, I'm curious what David thinks about training more on roads than trails before a trail race. I have a hard time finding good trails in my few hours of open time.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're time limited, whatever you can get's great. I mean, I think what you enjoy the most is probably the most important question there. But getting back to the running is running thing, as long as your body is prepared to handle the specific movements of like whatever trail you're on, then you can train almost anywhere. I mean, you'll get Casey training in Nebraska for UTMB, for example. But there's a lot of examples like that where you can train just about anywhere and have success, as long as you're doing these other things we mentioned, like running enough, doing all these things. So yeah, road training can be awesome. I like athletes to limit it just so that they don't hate themselves and running in life eventually. But especially if you're time limited, like do what you can.
Awesome. Love it. We have one more point. This is the 5th tip for every trail runner that trail runners need to know.
Where's the time prior that you were on number 4? We need
you really have brought
number 4.
You killed the
I was
mood.
building for it.
Okay.
Tip number 5.
Perfect.
I could probably do better.
No. That.
Yeah.
This is Coach saying.
No. It's a book.
It's good.
It's a book.
Yeah.
We're good. Tip number 5 was healthy running is active and earned. So this is it. This is the 5th tip all trail runners need to know. David, Explain.
So this just gets into the general point that if you just run, eventually you're going to get injured. You need to think of running as, a part of your identity, in a good way, in a way like that anything else would be a part of your identity, as opposed to siloing it off in your life so that it's not something that, like, I don't know, that it's almost as a defense mechanism that you just keep it separate. So what that means in practice is just do the little things, like make sure you pay attention to the total level of stress you're feeling, the sleep you have, like whether you can foam roll or not, whether you can do the little things like that, that they're just as important as running. And I think, at least when I was starting out, to me, this is something I was like, who cares about injury? When you're healthy, you're like, I'm never going to get injured. And when you're injured, you're like, I'm never going to be healthy. But it's something much more in between. All of us as runners are kind of towing that line, because adaptation requires stress. Injury is this on the other end of that. So we're always somewhere there. So think of it that way. And then the related sub point is like that this is all in the big stew of mental health. And, while running is a physical activity, it deeply influences our neurobiology and our emotions. And it's tied to everything else we bring in, from like our childhood to our relationship to, anything else you can imagine. And so with that in mind, like, be open about how your mental health is impacting your physical nature, and like be willing to talk to people about it, and not to stigmatize however you feel inside your own head. That however you feel inside your own head is okay, and that you're enough no matter what. And while that sounds like it's not related to running training, it is about as related to running training as anything, and it's more related to running training than anything I've said today.
I love it. Is this list included in the Happy Runner?
A version of it is, yeah. So you can, if you want to see like a lot more bad jokes, and Addie is a co-author in the Happy Runner, then you can buy that book. Man, Megan's going to be very unhappy with my marketing.
We'll have to have Megan on the show. Just Megan.
Yeah, just Megan. Just to market. We'll do a whole 5 tips to help my husband market better, sort of.
Yes.
You know what we should do when the book comes out? We should go to them.
We should. That'd be great. What a great idea.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
David's like,
I'm busy.
Can't confirm until I make sure.
This room I'm currently in is the Ginger Runner Live suite. So
that looks very similar.
Yeah. Well,
we'll bring this.
I don't want to turn the camera. You'll see like tons of pictures of you guys, and a shrine to Gus, like over there.
Megan, is this picture too much amongst the 20 others? Well, David, honestly, we cannot thank you enough for again, just dropping knowledge on this podcast and the show. And I know that our viewers and listeners love it. They love these episodes with you. Let's get to maybe one more live question, and then we are going to move into the post show with David. We'll keep him around for just a couple more minutes, and we'll get through some of the questions from our GR crew. So if you would like to join us in the post show, you can do so. It's very easy. You just go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, you get access to all of our live post shows, all of our archived post shows. They're one-on-ones with our guests, and we get a lot of really great questions from the crew. So you would become a member of the crew, and you get to ask those questions, which is pretty cool. So consider it if you have not already. It supports the show. It supports everything that we do here, and it is awesome. Really great community.
And I'm going to be giving something cool away to one of the ladies in the Patreon crew soon.
It is legit.
It's a date with Gus. With Gus.
It is like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, it is hundreds of dollars worth of something that I will be giving away soon.
Pretty excited.
Yeah.
So join us. But in the meantime, here's our last question.
Yeah, this question's been asked. A variation of it has been asked a couple of times during the hour. Jesse asked, how do you prioritize weight loss when it comes to running improvement, assuming the runner is overweight? Run more to lose weight or focus more on diet? Any advice on that?
That's an amazing question. I mean, our baseline point with these issues is that no matter what, your body is perfect. Like, because if you start from a place where you're evaluating your body on like a scale from 1 to 10 or whatever relative to your goals, like that inherently is going to lead you down a path of self-loathing eventually. Whether you like, I mean, it's like the paradox of all these issues is that you see someone who you think is perfect, who hates the way they look and hates their body and that sort of thing. So the basic place to start is like, you're perfect. You have a runner's body no matter what, even if you haven't run in years. And to really try to buy into that. And then when it comes to body composition and long-term health, and those are slightly different but related topics. And so when it comes to that, like that specific question, running more to lose weight is never like the right strategy, because that will also lead probably to perverse incentive structures down the line. Thinking about what you eat in a healthy way is much more sustainable. And what that means for each person is a lot different. Like clean eating can be a disordered eating too. What more means is like, you don't want to like binge and to do things that are destructive for your long-term health, but eat enough. Like, don't worry so much about counting calories or anything like that. And if you're practicing good self-care, your body will settle into a good place. But I'd rather an athlete be 60 pounds overweight than 0.6 pounds underweight, or not like feel amazing about themselves and their own body. So that's a tough issue that I think would always require a conversation over beers to fully undertake. But my main thing is like, make sure you love yourself and then think about body composition, rather than thinking about body composition and then thinking about, loving yourself.
I love it. I know that you and I have talked a lot about that. I know that you've had your journeys down those paths as well. And you also recently wrote a great article for Trail Runner regarding eating disorders and those types of things. I highly encourage people to go check that article out. David's just a really great writer. He writes on all sorts of topics that apply to all runners of all abilities. Really great source of information. So again, it's awesome to have you on the show, David. We love you to death. We think you're fantastic. Really, we just bring you on for Addie. Addie Dog is adorable.
Oh, I think she found her way out. She must have kicked open the door.
No.
Yeah, we saw that happen during the live stream. I was like, no, God, we have to talk to David first. But also, I want people to find you on social and ask the questions that maybe didn't get asked during the main show. How do they do that? Where do they find you?
Well, first, find the pre-order link to our book on Amazon. It helps us a lot if you're thinking about buying it to buy it now. So it's The Happy Runner. And maybe we can even post that with the show. But then on social media, you can basically Google me and find me in a lot of different places, and just never hesitate to send an email. I want to try to support everyone, even if I can't do it through full coaching. You can do basically any way I can support you is like amazing to me. So just let me know.
And I know that if you were looking for coaching services from David or Megan, reach out. Who knows? I know that they're often quite full, but they also have openings from time to time. So I won't speak for David. And recommendations. They have a whole series of coaches that they can recommend as well. Every time we have a coach on the show, whether it's David and Megan or Jason Coop or whoever, always reach out. You never know. They might have an opening and be able to take you on. Otherwise, they'll always refer you to someone who is fantastic. So definitely worth it. I think if you are looking to do this for a long time, it's nice to have that guidance and also to have a voice outside of your own that can help guide you. And
sometimes a voice of reason.
Sometimes a voice of reason.
And a voice of exclamation points.
And all caps.
And all caps.
Coach Babe, bring in the all caps.
Big thank you to David Roach, our guest for tonight's episode. Shout out to Candace Burt, who unfortunately could not make the live show at the very last minute due to an accident around her small town that just basically cut out all signal. We will get her on the show probably right before Moab, but she had a great race at TNOA this last weekend. If you follow us on social, I know that this weekend I was at TNOA. I'm going to talk a bit about it in the post show because it is legit. It is a brand new 100-mile race put on by our good friend Brian Morrison, who we've had on the show. We did a movie about called A Decade On. He put on his very first 100-mile race. It was this weekend here in Washington State. It was a monster. We'll talk a little bit more about it in the post show. We will have David join us in the post show. So if you are a Patreon supporter, a GR Crew member, we'll see you in just a couple of seconds. If you are not, consider it. Patreon.com/thegingerrunner. That's pretty much it. Am I forgetting anything?
I don't think so. You guys should be getting anybody who is participating in GRGR. I've been really, really busy packaging up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of packages this weekend. So you guys should be getting those in the mail soon. And
I'm sending out an email with all that stuff tonight, so you will get that email.
And the head wraps that we made to help pay for all of Gus's surgeries will be going up for sale soon.
This week.
Yeah.
They'll be going up for sale this week. So consider it. It helps us purely because the money is going straight into Gus's account for all of his surgeries. If you don't know what we're talking about, go back a couple episodes. The last few months have been an interesting journey with our pup, but he's healthy now and hanging on there. We'll see you guys in the post show. Thank you very much. Get out there, train hard, race harder, and party the hardest. Episode number 228 of Ginger Runner Live is now over. We'll see you guys next week for more. Thank you very much. Bye.